Hello, this is Laura Live, and we're going to talk about the working memory game. So first we're going to talk about, you're going to select the number of units. How many things do you want your student to have to remember at a time? Now this can be kind of difficult to ascertain. Probably want to start, if someone who's very severely affected has severe aphasia or apraxia, and they're starting to talk, you maybe want to just start with one. Someone who's a neurotypical children usually, or people, you learn one digit per age. So a 2-year-old should be able to remember 2 things, a 3-year-old 3 things, go and on and on. You may have a neurotypical, what you think is a neurotypical child who actually has dyslexia, and because they're so young, it hasn't presented itself yet. Usually dyslexia is not even uncovered until 7 up to 10 years old. I started my child very early, and so I figured it out when he was 2. But most people don't learn till later. So if you have a child who's 3 years old, a typical child, and you just want to use a game with him to get him sort of ahead, and he's only at a 1, you may be looking at he has some dyslexia there. So what you want to do is you want to start, if the average person who's GemIIni is, let's say, a 5-year-old child on the autism spectrum or with Down syndrome, you may want to start at a 2 or a 3, just to especially even start at a 2 so they get to have some success. The next thing you want to do is you want to check the box that says automatic difficulty advancement. If you're starting to try to find out where they are, you probably want to let the computer automatically advance. So it'll show 3 things, it'll go through 3 games, and if they get them all right, 3 in a row, it'll advance to the next one. If, let's say they're getting 2 right and then the 3rd one they get wrong, and then it goes back again, they get 2 right and the 3rd one they get wrong, and then it goes back again. You may want to go back and take off the automatic advancement because it looks like they're on 2 and they just need to stay there until you can be confident that they can get there. They can get through those 2 things. The next thing is we have a little star that comes on when they get it correct that says, ta-da! For most children, that's very reinforcing, and they want the star. Now, for a few children, it's startling. If you have a child who's very much in their default network, so that they're sort of in a daydream all the time, and you know what it's like to be in a dream state when you're dreaming, how scary dreams can be, they're confusing, you can't anticipate what's going to happen, things falling all over the place. Children on the autism spectrum, and sometimes even with Down syndrome, have a hyper-connected default network, so they're in that daydream state, and that, we believe, it's a theory, it seems pretty reasonable to me, is why they startle very easily. They have a lot of fear. They like to have routines all the time because they need to be able to overcome their fear. They need to know what's coming next. If you have that ta-da, it can be too startling for some children, so you're going to want to watch. If you put it on and they get really afraid and they don't like it, you may want to put GemIIni away, leave it away for a few days, and next time when you bring it out, take off the ta-da, so it's not there. And if they were totally freaked out, this is very rare, this is less than 1% who are going to be completely freaked out, you may want to play it again in front of them yourself, so they see you and they see that there's no scary star. Very, 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 very few people have this reaction, but since we just had even 2 have the reaction, we put this able to take off the ta-da sound. Next, you want to choose the puzzle type, the auditory or visual. Do you want it to be visual that you see or auditory that you just hear? We're going to always start with visual, but you want to work on the auditory too, and GemIIni is the only game that actually does this both. Especially people with dyslexia, they need to be able to hear, and hearing memory and visual memory needs to be high, and just everybody really. You want to, but start with the visual one and then back it up with the auditory one. With the auditory one, they have to have enough receptive language so they know what they're saying. So if you have a child who has very low receptive language and you want to start this, or you may want to just start with the visual one. And then I would go, so if you have a child, let's talk about this one child who has low receptive language and they're just doing a visual game, you probably want to go then do, as far as a puzzle name, you want to do animals. And animals are something that they recognize, they see in books, and they can remember. First they see a duck and then an elephant. And even if they don't know the names for duck and elephant, they can still put them in the right order. Typically for people who have receptive language and can speak, because we have animals, clothes, colors, food, and numbers, I usually start with numbers. It's the easiest one for the vast majority of the people, unless you're talking about just little children, then they don't know their numbers yet. If you don't know your numbers yet, quickly, like you can see an 8 and say 8 right away, then start at animals. Definitely start at animals and do more of the objects, do the clothing and the animals. And then we're going to go to the number of choices to be revealed. So this can be kind of tricky. If you have a student and you're starting with 2, you probably just want to have 2 choices to be revealed, so they don't have to see this big, long list. So let's say you're doing numbers. I'll just do numbers because it's easy, and you're only going to have 2 numbers that'll show up. You only want to have 2 choices to pick from at first. It makes it very easy, and they will have a much better chance of getting it correct. Once they've got it correct 3 times in a row, then start adding more choices to the field up until you have 9 choices to choose from. Once you have 9 choices to choose from and they're still getting it correct, then you can move on and you know that they got it, that they're getting it. And then we have the ability to pause before each test. Now, every time there's a test, the next one comes up very quickly. Some people, I would say most people with Down syndrome, many people with stroke, about half the people with autism need to kind of regroup and think about and be able to just, okay, calm down before the next test that comes on. My son with dyslexia, we want to keep it moving very quickly, so I don't want to pause it. He needs to see the next right away because he's just loses interest or is thinking about whatever, starts talking about something else. If there's a pause, I need to keep him focused on this game. So you want to try that. The pause is probably, for as far as the GemIIni, people who use GemIIni, probably half the people really should have the pause, and you can judge that. Then the number of seconds to view. Now, historically, in any kind of digit span work that they do with a lot of the neurodevelopmentalists do, you would have a +1 rule. So if you want to test someone's digit span on 2 items, you would let them see it for 3 seconds. You'll find when people are first starting that is not enough time. So I like to double it at first. So if you have showing 2 items, you want to set that at 4 seconds. It has a +3, I think, default on GemIIni. So if it's 2, it'll be to 5. But that's fine when it's lower. But when you get to, let's say you're looking at a 5-digit span, 8 +3 on that, so 8, that may not be long enough. So when I started with my son, when we got up to 5, we were doing 10 seconds for him to watch it. Now we're down, he could probably do it around 8 now. But you're going to want to increase those seconds until the child can get it. Don't let those seconds get in the way of his actual ability to memorize things. He may need longer, and then you can slowly reduce the seconds. Now, there's a way that we can use this with both memory and word retrieval. Now we were talking about retrieval with aphasia and apraxia, and that being able to get things out, and with dyslexia being able to get the sounds out very fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the visual puzzle in something that they can say. With apraxia and with stroke, sometimes people can say animal names, but they can't say numbers. Sometimes they can say clothing, but they can't say animal names. So you have to sort of look at the options that we have there. My go-to on this is numbers, but you have to have someone who knows their numbers and he can say them. They don't have to say them fast, but that's because that's what we're working on. So what you would do is you would have the puzzle come up and you would have the person say it out loud as fast as they can. So if, let's say right now my son with dyslexia, he's up at a 5. So 5 numbers come up and he has to say 7, 8, 2, 4, 3. With him though, because of his word retrieval issue, it's 7, 6, 5, 9, 4, 5. It's like that. And now it's how we started. That's how we started. But he started at only doing 2 like that. Now at 5, and now if he's paying attention, he can go, so 4, 5, 2, 3. He has to take a little breath in between each one. It's like a little pause he takes. He can't just say it out loud. There's this little pause he takes. And he has to say them through twice. And then he'll get it right. And he's getting, over just the last few months, he's getting faster and faster on this. Before he could only read 3-letter words. Now he can read 4 and 5 letter words because this retrieval is coming so much faster. If you do this with someone who has a stroke, you will see that over time their retrieval becomes easier. With someone with autism, their retrieval becomes easier, and you'll notice in real life when you start asking your student, so how was school today? They won't say it was fine. They'll start saying, I had apple for lunch, and you'll notice, it gave me more this time. And you'll notice that they'll give you more and more and more in conversation because it will be easier to retrieve. How long is this going to take? Could take a couple of days, could take a couple of years. Everybody's brain is different, but it's going to take a lot longer if you don't do this. The perfect world, your therapist or you yourself, if you live in a perfect real world situation, is using this game with your students 3 times a day for as long as they will tolerate it. So if they don't like it, you may want to start with a timer and have a little treat like raisins or something right next to the treat. When the timer goes off, they know they're going to get their treat. Some kids and adults love playing this game. They love playing. Some do not like it. And that's why we put the animals in there to make it more fun. The little ta-da. We're trying to do everything we can to make it fun. This takes us probably 6 minutes every night. That's it. That's my real world. Perfect world, it would be 6 minutes 3 times a day. So don't feel bad if you're only getting it in 1 time a day. It's okay.